Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Putting together a quick video kind of outlining full installation of the trolling motor parts on our Garmin install. So as we went over in our unboxing video, this is our case. You'll see the main parts of the assembly. That was the foot control. This is the junction block. This is where all the wiring comes in and out. These are parts that are not going on the trolling motor, so we're going to kind of push them to the side for right now. These are the main parts that we're going to be installing. The motor, the rail. These are centering rings that are attached to the rail that center the rail on the shaft of the trolling motor. This is the new Garmin rail, which we'll get to and show details on. This is the main motor assembly. What we like to do is we like to ship our units. We assemble everything, and we do a at least 12 to 18 hour burn in on all of the assemblies and test them completely. And part of that testing is to fully assemble them. So with that, we kind of made the decision to leave them assembled instead of taking everything apart, having just bags or boxes of parts. We left it assembled, so it will add 5 minutes or so to your assembly time, but it's a great way of knowing how this thing is assembled. So I think in the long run, I think it's a positive. And so here we're taking off the end plate to the motor, and the way this thing is made, it's all two pieces. Everything that goes on the shaft has to clamshell around the shaft, and that's how we're able to make this a bolt-on. When we first did prototyping, we had it a slip-on where you had to take the trolling motor shaft out of the turning head of the trolling motor, and some industry people told me that these companies would void the warranties on the trolling motors. So we kind of made a pivot and decided not to do that. So the result of not doing that is everything has to clamp around the shaft. So this is the main outer clamp, and you'll notice when this comes off that everything kind of falls out of the middle. And you'll also notice, in order to make things as precise as we'd like them to be, all the clamp parts are pinned, and we use 1/8" stainless steel precision pins that we machine slots into. It's kind of like you'll see on a high-end scope ring, and that locates it. Screw holes do not locate things as well as we wanted to locate them, so we decided to add the pins for that. So in my left hand, you'll see the trolling motor mirror drive gear. In the right hand is the main drive assembly. Again, the trolling motor drive gear has 2 screws that hold that together. This part is also pinned together and is something that we'll have to take apart. So all of these screws on the clamshell parts are all 8/32 3/16 stainless steel screws that are a 1/2 inch long. So we use the same screw on all those parts, and that kind of makes it a little bit easier. But we do have quite a few screws, and here you see the pins. So these parts are pinned as well. So when they go together, it's almost like it's one piece. The gear is just really nicely fit together. The pins can fall out, so you'll want to kind of keep track of that. We're sending all of these units with a couple extra stainless steel pins. If you do happen to lose one, or if you lose more than the extra 2 that we send, you can call us and we'll send you some. This is the main drive assembly that gets driven by the aluminum gear that's on the motor. You'll notice the pivoting action of this part. That's the key to the whole deal. Without this pivot assembly, everything binds up, and it just simply won't work. We tried to make it work, and it wouldn't work. And so we spent a long time coming up with this, and even filed. It's one of the elements in our patent that we filed. is this flex disc configuration. It's not unlike a CV joint if you've ever done any automotive work. The way the flex disc works, there's 3 screws that go in each direction, and they're offset 60 degrees. So these little access holes allow you to unscrew the flex disc from the Delrin drive gear. Again, this is a 2-piece part, so we have to take it apart as well. I'd left the screws out of this one, but again, they're pinned, so be conscious of the pins. Try to keep track of those. So again, we have 3 screws that go down into the upper rail mount, and then 3 screws that come up through the upper rail mount into the Delrin drive gear. One thing when you're screwing in these screws, you don't want to go overboard on tightening them down. They tighten down onto an EPDM grommet that we have made, and it's designed to be snug but not tight. And that's what gives it a little bit of give and allows it to flex the way it needs to. So this is the 2 halves of the upper rail mount, and this has 2 short screws and then 2 long screws that go all the way through and lock these together. You'll also see there's 2 precision pins on this part as well, and that allows them to have a real nice tight lockup when you screw them together. So these are the pieces. Again, it takes a few minutes to take those apart, but then you've got a really good idea of how they go back together. So now we're jumping over the trolling motor. You'll see I'm horrible about dropping screws, and so I put 2 microfiber towels underneath. It's not the end of the world if you drop a part. It's kind of a pain to fish them out of the inside of the trolling motor, and I know this because I've done it about 1,000 times. So with that, the first things we'll put on the trolling motor shaft are the centering rings and the lower centering bushing. The 2 horseshoe pieces just snap on, and you'll notice one of these is a little bit bigger than the other one. The bigger one goes on the upper end of the shaft, and that ends up attaching to the lower part of the upper rail, and those pieces just snap on really easy. Now this is the centering bushing for the lower end of the shaft, and this can be kind of a pain to put on, and it's pretty tight. I would probably recommend you put on a pair of gloves because it can kind of snap your fingers. And you don't want to do this in super cold weather. If it's cold, you make sure you warm that piece up so that it'll flex and not crack. If it's below like 40 degrees, it'll crack when you put it on. But once it's on, you can see it provides a seat for the lower guide. You can't really tell from here. You'll notice when you install, but there's a keyway that sticks off the side of the trolling motor, and that bushing allows that lower to ride on that. So the reason for the upper bushing is if anything pushes straight down against the shaft against my rail towards the shaft of the trolling motor, nothing will happen. But if it pushes from the sides, nothing will happen. But if it pushes from behind, it could bend it out. So that upper bushing is just there to help prevent that. So here's the trolling motor drive gear. This is a tricky part to make. You'll notice it has 4 notches on it, and each one of those notches has a dimple next to it, and they go from small to large, and the 1 dot is the smallest, the 4 dots the largest. And what we found is that keyway that runs down the side of the trolling motor varied in width, and it varied in width even on the same trolling motor. So it would be, you'd put that on and it would be super tight in one spot, but then have play in another. And if that has play, then your trolling motor mirror has play, because this is what we read to pick that up. So again, it's got 4 notches. They go from from smallest to largest. 1 is the smallest, 4 is the largest. And what I like to do is kind of put it on at 1 and see how it feels, and then kind of keep going up, or even I like to see how all of them feel. And what you're wanting, there's one of the pins came out. What you're wanting is it for to have no play. That's the key. But you also want it to be able to move up and down the trolling motor shaft a little bit, because we've got to locate that inside our motor assembly. So it just takes a little feel to get it, and it's not something you can really screw up. But you'll notice here I'm kind of testing to see how much play it's got, and to see if it'll slide up and down. And there's very minute differences between the slots, so sometimes it can be kind of hard to tell. I think on this install I ended up with a number 3. So we kind of aimed to have it in the middle. We measured a bunch and found the widest one, which is what the 4 is, and the narrowest one, which is what the 1 is. So here you see how it gets tighter up at the top. It's really an interesting deal, but it's kind of one of the challenges when you're making parts to fit on OEM assemblies. So here we're going to screw this together. This one's a little tricky because you got access to one screw from above, and then the other screw has to come in from below, because this part does not turn on the shaft. So it has to come in from below. So I usually just raise the shaft up 6 or 8 inches and then hit this one from the bottom. Everything else is really easy to get to because it all rotates. So this underneath screw on this, and then one of the mounting screws on the motor bracket, are a little kind of cantankerous to get to. So here we're going to raise the trolling motor up a little bit so we can get to that underside screw. This is usually when I drop a screw, but I don't think I did this time. Just a side note, I love these. This is the Allen keys I'm using are made by Klein, and they're T handles, and they have a ball end on them, and use the heck out of them and really like them. And they make this job a little bit easier. And we chose not to include Allen keys with this. We end up using, I think, 3 sizes. It seems pretty wasteful to me every time I get something and I have Allen keys, and I've got 500 of them laying around. So there you go. So that's how the trolling motor drive gear goes on. And again, you want it snug, but not so snug that it can't slide up and down the shaft. So now we're going to put the flex disc on, and the flex disc is easy. Again, got 3 screws going in each direction. It doesn't matter where this is located. It just has to go on, and make sure you don't push the screws out, but it just kind of opens up and goes on. So it's really easy, and that's how it's going to spin around the shaft. All the rest of these parts are well bigger than the shaft, so they orbit around the shaft. They don't actually touch the shaft. So here's the Delrin drive gear. This gets driven by the aluminum gear that's on the motor, and this is a pretty seriously heavy part, really thick. And I tend, on my assemblies, I don't like aluminum driving aluminum, so that's why we've got aluminum driving Delrin plastic parts instead. So again, this is a pin part, so we pin it, so we snap it together and then screw it together, and the pins just locate it perfectly. And there went a screw. Again, this part rotates on the shaft, so you can just spin it around and hit the other screw on the other side. Makes it really easy. And the way that'll work is it'll work. It sits just like it is right there. The Delrin drive gear mounts right up against the trolling motor drive gear. So now we're going to put the upper rail mount on. This comes together again. It's pinned. It's got 2 precision pins that locate it. So you just kind of snap them together, get them lined up, snap them together, and then we're going to screw the flex disc back into it. So we're just reversing what we did to start this process by taking apart. Now we're going to put it back together, and there are 3 8/32 female holes in the top of that, and we just line it up and drive these screws down in it. And I think it's a 5/64 Allen key, so these are pretty small. The Allen on them is pretty small. And again, these tend to, I think it's about 10 rotations, get them all the way down. I tend to do like 5 or 6 and then go to the next one and kind of progressively go around so it doesn't get bound up. But once you'll on this one, you'll be able to see when it's starting to get tight, and you just get it finger tight. That's all that needs to happen here. So we've got the 3 going down. Those have to go together first. If you put those together first, if you put the ones going up into the Delrin drive gear first, then you won't be able to assemble the bottom. So the assembly order on this is really important. So now we're going to screw up into that Delrin drive gear, and there's just 3 screws and 3 screw locations for that. So it's pretty easy to put together. This is where having a ball end on your Allen key is kind of important. You can see how I've got it kind of off center. This one's tough to get it centered because it's right parallel with the shaft. But there's 3 little holes on the underside of that upper rail mount, the aluminum upper rail mount, and that allows you to have access to those screw heads. And again, just finger tight. Don't get carried away on how tight that is. So now we've got the drive assembly put together and ready to go. So now we're ready for the motor. The motor is the next part. And again, the motor and the bracket mount to the underside of the turning head of the trolling motor. So here's the motor assembly. In your small parts package, you'll get, before we get to that, the cable for this is in kind of a tight place. So I recommend at this time, before you put the bracket on, go ahead and put the cable on. It'll make your life a lot easier, because if not, it's kind of in a tight spot and you have to get it keyed just the right way. Get that all snugged down, and you can see there how there's not a lot of space. So here's the mounting bracket. It's got 3/4 28 screws, 3/16 stainless steel screws that mount down into the motor cover. These you can tighten down pretty good. And just so you know, I'm not fast forwarding through this. I'm showing it in real time just so you have an idea of about how long a process this is. I don't want to mislead anybody on what all is involved in the install. So now, if you notice, the upper bracket is notched, and it's notched to accept the support, the bump buster support from Garmin. And that, here I'm pointing out, one of the screws is really, that screw is really tight with the cable, and that one we wait and do last. So now we're gonna size it up. I like to start this with the trolling motor drive gear about 3/4 of an inch away from the tightening collar, which, by the way, that all still works. So you can still get to that collar and raise and lower the trolling motor. I like for the trolling motor upper rail mount to be facing straight up. You can see the screw holes facing straight up. That makes setup a little easier if that starts that way. It kind of keeps your cables in order. Here we are putting the bracket on. If you notice, the bracket can only fit one way, and that's facing backwards. So it has to go on that way. So, and you'll notice also the our bracket is notched to accept it. So now we've got to insert the trolling motor drive gear and the main drive gear into the motor and hold it and run a screw through my upper bracket and the Garmin bracket. So this is a little bit of a three-handed operation. Again, it's not hard. It's just, you're just trying to hold a lot of things steady. So I like to get that screw in there snug. If you're that's the one to do first. And then the one to do second is the one opposite. So if you're standing looking at the underside of your trolling motor turning head, it's the top left and bottom right are the two that you need to do first. And then I just snug those up. I don't get those on there real tight yet. I'll do that at the very end. So now we have that whole assembly together. Now all we have to do is put the end cap back on. Again, remember your stainless steel pins. Make sure they're on there. And you also notice there's 4 holes for stainless steel pins and only 2 pins. Well, I do that just in case you mangle one of them. We've got extra holes. So we only use 2, which is what all that's really needed. So now we're going to screw that end cap back on. I do kind of a star pattern. I skip every other one and make sure it gets on there nice and straight. And the fit up on this, you can't really tell here, but the fit up on this is super nice. Real happy with how tight the seams come together. We ended up, while I'm putting this together, the first ones of these we did were anodized. And the way that these bolt to the underside of the trolling motor head, I was worried about having cathodic protection, it being an anode and it just eating up the anodizing being in the water and being on that head. So we made the decision to go and pivot to a Cerakoting. So this is all Cerakote Elite, which is their top of the line coating. So here's the rail, and this is the first time I've shown the new Garmin rail, and this is a V rail. And if you're into firearms, it's not all that different than a Picatinny rail or an Arca rail. It's actually very similar to an Arca rail. It's got a V shape on the ends. You'll also notice that there's a serration there on the bottom of that rail. It's got notches in it, and those are to accept little pins that are in the other part of the V. So you can see these little pins sticking through, and that just allows for a crazy good lockup. I mean, you tighten this thing down and you cannot tell it's not one piece. So it's really a good. We're really happy with how that locked up. It is a great system. So all you have to do is loosen it. If you loosen it a little bit, it won't slide down. It's one of the things that was super important to us. I've seen too many videos and pictures of people with other turrets where the shaft got loose and fell into the trolling motor prop. And when that happens, you've just lost you've lost $1,000+ transducer. So I'm really sensitive to it. Don't want that to happen. So this notching system is a really good fail safe against that. So here you'll see we got 4 screws coming through the sides. Those are the screws that will go through the side of the centering block, and they'll be on the rail when you get the product. So you have to take those out. And again, they're 8/32 half-inch stainless steel screws. So one thing too that you'll see that on the upper mounting, there's 4 screws, and 2 of them are 8/32 half-inch, and those are the 2 that are closest to the bottom of the trolling motor. And then I also have 2 that are 1 inch long that go all the way through this and clamp this bracket shut. And those are the 2 upper screws. So that one's a half-inch, this one's a half-inch, and then I have 2 long screws. I think those are the only ones that you'll have to deal with that are longer than 1/2. All the rest are half. So these are the long ones. Here I'm just showing off the articulation of that system. You'd be amazed at how much a trolling motor shaft flexes, both when you're using it, when you bump up against something, when you stow the trolling motor, it's under flex. Now here I'm showing there's a little radius on the edge of the centering ring, and that needs to be facing the upper rail because there's a radius in the bottom edge of that notch. And I had it on the wrong way, and I had to flip it around. Now we're ready for the lower rail. So again, the lower rail will notch into the lower centering ring, and you can see how that's profiled to notch in there. So this again is not anything that's even possible to screw up. But you also notice you can see there's a radius on the inside edge of that part as well that you'll have to kind of pay attention to. So here we are, we're tightening down the clamp, and we're doing this just temporarily to set things up. The lower centering bushing and all the centering bushings, or the centering bushing and then the 2 centering rings, they all float up and down the shaft. So they're not rigidly mounted. So you can, as you shorten and raise, they go with you, and they just slip on the shaft. They're really friction free. Again, eight 30-second half-inch screws on these as well. So that's pretty much it. It's really a cool setup. It hits every checkbox that we wanted. It's flexible. It allows us to mount multiple things. You'll notice there's a little bit of a play. That's by design. The rubber grommets have a little bit of a play to it. If you make something like this that has no play in it, it's not gonna last 2 seconds. It's really a slick setup, and all the play, we use absolute position sensor, so any play is picked up by our system, so we know if it's moving. So here it shows the free play of the motor, which was huge for us. That's one of the reasons we had custom motors made. But you'll notice how small and trim everything is, and you can see I'm talking here about there's a wishbone that sticks up from the trolling motor, and we had to raise up to clear that, and we ended up having to raise up above that wishbone, and that we just decided to go ahead and raise it up and continuing all the way down, and it gives us a 0-degree mount kind of built into it. There you can see you can pull on it and it's not going to go anywhere. So that's if something hit it from behind. If you hit it from the front, again, it's just going to go right up against the shaft. Anything from the side is against the strength of the rail itself, and it's really strong. So it's all billet aluminum. If you're into archery, it's basically like a bow riser. But you can see the two transducer mounting positions, the screw holes all the way up it. They're all 1/4-28 screws. We can do all kinds of crazy stuff. We can mount another transducer. We've got clips for cable management. You can do a hydro wave. You can do if you wanted to do a locating stick sticking off of it to show right where it's facing for setup, we can do that. The clamp, you can see how short we can go and how fast we can go short. So in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, you can raise it up. You see the problem there, that the wishbone that sticks up, that prohibits anything from really going right there next to it. So that's kind of the limit of raising anything, whether it be our transducer or somebody else's. Now you can lift it up and raise it up past it and even make it shorter, but then you're getting down to where you've got like a 15-inch trolling motor shaft, and that's kind of, I'm not sure there's a use case for that. We think we've got a great solution for this, and I'm ecstatic about how this turned out. The Cerakoting looks great, and it's super tough. It's what people put on AR-15s. Here's the perspective bracket. This is going to be an add-on if you want to run a perspective bracket, and we made the perspective bracket with 64 notches on it. So we've got 5.65 degrees of granularity with how you line that up. And then there you would put your forward facing one on the bottom. So we can run doubles. We can even add another one up above it if you wanted to add another one. So it's a crazy slick setup. And again, there's nothing on the marketplace that's this flexible, that's this strong, that can be adjusted in the amount of time that this can be adjusted. Even the some of the new mounts you're seeing that go directly on the shaft, they're not nearly this flexible. We can do so many things with this, and we've got things coming that I can't talk about yet that are going to go on this rail system that are really slick. So that kind of wraps it up. Again, appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, please ask below, and please follow us stay tuned for more information soon. Thanks.